Today I'm going to talk about one of the most fascinating, respected and venerated bishops of the 20th century, Saint Luke, Archbishop Luka, an Orthodox Christian bishop and one of the most respected Russian and Soviet surgeons of the 20th century. This legendary man lived a life of Christian ministry, medical vocation, selfless service to others, but also suffering and persecution. Born in 1877 in Kerch, Crimea, Valentin Felixovich Voyno-Yasenetsky grew up in a family with roots in Polish nobility. His father was a practicing Catholic and his mother was Orthodox. Valentin and his siblings grew up going to an Orthodox church. Initially, young Valentin wanted to become an artist, and he studied in various art schools. He became interested in the religious ideas of Leo Tolstoy and became a Tolstoyan himself for some time. The major themes were peaceful resistance to violence, anti-clericalism, and simple sustainable living. Although Valentin became disappointed with Tolstoy's philosophy after reading his book What I Believe, he still decided to dedicate his life to serving other people. He found that his drawing talent went well with his new interest in human anatomy while studying medicine at the University of Kiev. After the university, he strived to serve as a local doctor in provincial towns to help the poor. In 1904, during the war with Japan, he was commissioned to the Red Cross in the Far East. There he earned his first substantial experience in surgery, operating on countless wounded soldiers. His two main concerns were the terrible side effects of narcosis as opposed to the application of local anesthesia and operating on patients with severe septic conditions. Eventually, he became a world-renowned pioneer in local anesthesia and septic surgery. During his work for the Red Cross, Valentin met a nurse, Anna Lanskaya. Despite her previously given vows of celibacy, she eventually married the young surgeon and would bear him 4 children. After the war, he moved around Russia, working in different hospitals and continuing his research on local anesthesia. In 1916, his monograph was qualified as a doctoral dissertation and won an award from Warsaw University. When Valentin's wife became sick with tuberculosis, the family moved to Tashkent, the capital of Uzbekistan in Central Asia, where Valentin started working at the local hospital. After the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917, Valentin was arrested for his connections to the anti-Bolshevik uprising. He was saved from potential execution by one of his former patients, a local party functionary. He immediately resumed his work at the hospital as usual. Since his childhood, Valentin had been religious. He always prayed before operations, blessed his staff and patients, sometimes to their dismay if they were, for instance, Muslims or communists. In 1919, his wife succumbed to tuberculosis and he was left with 4 children. A nurse from his hospital took care of the children so that Valentin could continue his work. An active churchgoer and a local authority figure, Valentin was offered a clerical ministry by the Tashkent Archbishop Innocenti. In 1921, he was ordained a deacon, then a priest. Due to his workload in the hospital, Father Valentin was engaged in a part-time ministry, mostly serving and preaching on Sundays. From his ordination until his last days, he mostly taught in medical universities and delivered all his public speeches in a clerical attire, causing much annoyance with the secular authorities. After the rise of the Renovationist movement, Father Valentin remained faithful to Patriarch Tikhon and refused to share communion with schismatics. When Archbishop Innocenti left Tashkent under the pressure of Renovationists, the local clergy proposed Father Valentin for a bishop. In 1923, he was tonsured a monk, Luka, in the name of the Apostle Luke, a physician, and later ordained a bishop by 3 bishops exiled in the region. He was appointed a bishop of Turkestan, that is, Central Asia. In 1923, Bishop Luka was arrested again for anti-Soviet agitation and usurping the church power, which basically meant rejecting the state-supported renovationists. In jail, he started working on his monograph on septic surgery, which would become his major contribution to medical science. He was eventually freed under the condition of moving to Moscow under the supervision of the NKVD, the infamous secret police. In Moscow, he had a chance to meet and serve the liturgy with Patriarch Tikhon. Yet, he got arrested again, put in Butyrka prison, and then exiled to Siberia. Moving around the region, he actively engaged in work and ministry. He conducted multiple operations, but also liturgies and ordinations of priests. In 1926, he returned to Tashkent, however, not for long. In 1929, a local professor, Mikhailovsky, committed suicide. He was known for experimenting with attempts to revitalize dead tissue, trying to resurrect his dead son. Eventually, his mental state deteriorated and he killed himself. Bishop Luka investigated his death and concluded that Mikhailovsky was mentally ill and hence did not bear the sin of suicide and could have a Christian burial. In 1930, the local OGPU, a punitive law enforcement agency, opened a criminal case. Mikhailovsky's wife was labeled as a religious fanatic responsible for causing her husband's death, and Bishop Luka as her accomplice. Luka was arrested and exiled to the north regions of Kotlas and Arkhangelsk. Actively engaged in local hospitals, as usual, he was offered significant privileges in work in exchange for resigning from the clergy. He sternly refused. In 1933, he came back to Moscow and the next year to Tashkent, where he finally published his monograph, for which he was awarded another doctorate in 1936. In 1937, at the peak of Stalin's repressions, Bishop Luka was arrested for anti-revolutionary activities and alleged killings of his patients during operations. An accusation like that could easily earn him a firing squad. Luka rejected all accusations and wrote multiple appeals. His alleged accomplices confessed under threats and torture and were executed. He himself was subjected to torturous multiple-day interrogations. However, probably due to his notoriety and significance for the medical community, he was sentenced to a 5-year exile in Krasnoyarsk. Needless to say, he continued actively working and operating. In 1941, after the start of the Great Patriotic War against Nazi Germany, Luka petitioned the state authorities, urging them to use his skills for the war effort, promising to return to his exile after the war ended. He was appointed a lead surgeon in the evacuation hospital in Krasnoyarsk and an advisor for all other hospitals in the region. In 1942, he was promoted to archbishop and appointed to the Diocese of Krasnoyarsk. However, he had the opportunity to focus mostly on his hospital work. Meanwhile, he actively campaigned for the restoration of parish life and local churches. As a regional archbishop, he served liturgies in a small village church. In 1943, Archbishop Luka participated in the Bishops' Council in Moscow that elected Sergei a patriarch. He was made a permanent member of the Holy Synod, but due to his workload, he could not participate in most of the sessions. In 1944, Luka was moved to Tambov and appointed to the local cathedra. Campaigning for the restoration of local churches, he was pressured by the Council for Religious Affairs. When Patriarch Sergei died, Archbishop Luka criticized the new Bishops' Council that only proposed one candidature for the Patriarch, Metropolitan Alexei, and eventually Luka was not admitted. In 1946, his two major monographs won Archbishop Luka a major state accolade, Stalin's Award. He donated 130,000 of his 200,000 ruble stipend to children suffering from the consequences of the war. The same year, he was appointed to Crimea. There he actively engaged in ministry, but again confronted the local council for the religious affairs. As an archbishop, Luka was very hard on the local clergy, but, at the same time, promoted any clergyman previously imprisoned or exiled. The local council did not just resist these promotions, but also, unlike many other regions, was actively closing churches and parishes. Archbishop Luka actively published on theology, Christian anthropology, and preached sermons. Many of his sermons would later be also published. The council criticized his sermons for too much influence on the youth and going beyond the gospel. Throughout his numerous arrests, Luka claimed that politically he remained a constitutional Democrat, which was a pre-revolutionary party defeated by the Bolsheviks. Later on, Luka stated that he wholeheartedly supported the Soviet foreign and domestic policy, praised the technological progress of the industrialization, but condemned the persecution of Christianity. All these statements would probably get someone less notorious and valuable than Luka executed or sent to the Gulag. Back in 1934, due to a progressing illness and despite the operation, Luka lost vision in one of his eyes. In 1955, he became completely blind. He thus could not continue his surgical work. Archbishop Luka dictated his memoirs, which would later be published and translated into different languages. He earned multiple accolades, awards, and honorary titles, both secular and in the church. Archbishop Luka died in 1961 in Simferopol and was buried in the local cemetery. His children and grandchildren followed in his steps and all became doctors or researchers in biology. In the year 2000, Valentin Felixovich Voino-Yasenetsky was fully acquitted and rehabilitated from all criminal convictions, following the law on the victims of political repressions. In 1995, Archbishop Luka was canonized as a locally venerated saint in Crimea and in 1996 in Krasnoyarsk. His relics were moved to the Saint Trinity Church of Simferopol. In 2000, at the council in Moscow, Luka was canonized as a Hieroconfessor, that is, a bishop who suffered from proclaiming his faith but was not martyred. He is venerated as a part of the pantheon of new martyrs and confessors of the Russian Orthodox Church, together with all venerated Orthodox saints persecuted for their faith by the communist regime. Saint Luka is very popular in Greece due to the works of Metropolitan Nectarius of Argolis, who has actively promoted Luka as a saint confessor. Nectarius helped with translations of Saint Luka's works and has authored many publications on his life and teachings himself. Parts of Saint Luka's relics were gifted to various churches in Greece. Saint Luka's legacy lives on, as diverse and multifaceted as his life and personality. In medicine, he is the founding father of septic surgery and one of the key figures in local anesthesia. In Orthodox Christianity, he is one of the most venerated saints of the 20th century, a holy confessor and the patron saint of the sick, doctors, medical personnel, and surgeons in particular. Please like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you all next time.